When you hear the term Jewish, what do you think? A people, a religion, Jesus, Albert Einstein, maybe Hank Azaria? Well, in the current world, for many, the Jewish identity is more mysterious than ever. Many people don't truly understand what it means to be Jewish. Are they white? Are they Middle Easterners? What exactly is a Jew? I mean, we hear that it is a quote unquote ethno religion, but what does that mean? How can a religion also be an ethnicity? Why do Jews in America mostly come from one community and look a certain way, whereas Jews in Iraq or Libya look a completely different way? What is Ashkenazi, Mizrahi, Sephardi? How do they end up in such a vast area around the globe when their religious identity originates from one piece of land in the Levant? What is the genetic makeup of these people? These are all common questions when it comes to the Jewish identity, and today I will try my best to answer them all. Also, if you like this video, like and subscribe. This is my second video ever, so anything helps. Well, to start off, the Jewish identity originates in the Levant. However, it is debated on when exactly the ancestors of Jews started identifying as Jewish. Some say it could have been around the time of Abraham, 4,000 years ago, whereas the most likely answer is between 2 to 3,000 years ago after the Israelites returned to Judah from their exile in Babylon. As Jewish people were exiled from their home, as Jewish kingdoms rose and fell and even became incorporated in larger empires like the Roman Empire, there were waves of migrations into different regions, mostly in the Mediterranean and the greater Middle East. These regions became the home of many Jewish communities. I'll be going over three larger Jewish communities in this video. However, I would like to mention these aren't the only Jewish communities, with slightly smaller groups like the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, Cochin Jews, Bene Israel, or Madras Jews of India, Abba Yudaya of Uganda, Gurjim of the Caucasus, and the Kaifeng of China being some of the other Jewish communities that won't be mentioned as much in this video. However, they are pretty interesting groups to learn about, and maybe I'll make a video about them one day. Mizrahi. The term Mizrahi refers to Eastern or Oriental in Hebrew. Mizrahi Jews, for the most part, are Jewish communities that have lived in the Muslim world, in the Middle East, parts of North Africa, all the way up to Central and South Asia. Unlike Ashkenazi or Sephardi Jews, the term Mizrahi is more of a catch-all term for the Jewish populations that resided in these areas. These populations can be traced back thousands of years, even though the term Mizrahi is very much a more recently developed term that came about after Middle Eastern Jewish immigrants started to pour into what was then the new state of Israel. Mizrahi historically spoke the language of the regions that they were in, whether that be Arabic, Aramaic, or Persian. Sephardic Jews, like the Mizrahi, are also another people that come from mostly Islamic countries. However, Sephardic people, unlike Mizrahi, have a specific region in which their identity originates, and that place is the Iberian Peninsula. Sephardic Jews are the descendants of Jews that were living in the Roman Empire and settled in modern-day Spain and Portugal. When the Muslim Andalusian Umayyads lost power to the Catholic Christians in 1492, Jews were expelled from Spain and most ended up in North Africa, while other Sephardic communities popped up in other regions of the Mediterranean, like in Italy and Greece, where there were actually pre-existing Jewish populations like the Italkim of Italy and the Romaniot of Greece, who are neither Sephardic or Ashkenazi in origin. The language that is associated with Sephardi people is Judeo-Spanish or Ladino, which developed in Spain and is influenced heavily by Hebrew. Ashkenazi Jews are by far the largest Jewish community, at around 70% of the world's Jewish population. The Ashkenazi identity originates in Central Europe, between the Rhine River in Germany and northeastern France, and over time they migrated more and more east into countries like Poland and Russia. It is believed that the Ashkenazi population developed when their ancestors living in Italy in the Roman Empire felt there were better opportunities further up north, especially during the time of Charlemagne's Frankish Empire. Southern Italian Jews also followed these migrations up into Central Europe, and these became the ancestors of the modern-day Ashkenazi. Ashkenazi traditionally speak Yiddish, which is a West Germanic language like English or German. However, it is heavily influenced by Hebrew and other Semitic languages like Aramaic, and it is also written in the Hebrew script. These three groups make up most of the modern Jewish population, but what is the genetic ancestry of these people? Now, when it comes to the ancient ancestries of these three Jewish groups, There are a few ancient populations that are represented in their DNA. It is important to note that for these groups, there can be a quite large range in terms of ancestries from certain regions. So genes can vary community to community and also from person to person within a community. Mizrahi Jewish DNA can vary a lot, as this is an identity and term that originated only a few decades ago. Mizrahi's Levantine DNA can vary between 30% to 80% depending on the individual. Some Mizrahi Jews are quite closely related to the non Jewish communities in their countries, while other Mizrahi Jewish communities are more closely related to other groups in the Middle East. It is hard to get an exact image of the Mizrahi genome as this is a catch all term. For example, Kaifeng Jews of China would have mostly East Eurasian based DNA, whereas an Egyptian Jew would be genetically very different. In terms of ancient populations, Middle Eastern Jews tend to be the descendants of the same groups as the average Middle Easterner, having ancient ancestry from the Anatolian Neolithic farmers, Zagrosian pastoralists, Natufian hunter gatherers, with some Caucasus hunter gatherer as well. European Jews would also be descendants of these same groups, just with lower rates of most of these ancestries. However, they tend to have similar rates of Anatolian Neolithic farmer DNA as Middle Eastern Jews, as this DNA component is quite high in Southern Europeans, and the ancestors of both Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jews lived in Southern Europe for quite a long time, mixing with populations with high rates of these ancestries. They would also have ancestry from European hunter gatherers and even Yellow River Neolithic farmers. Ashkenazi Jews are quite genetically mixed. Around 35 to 45% of their DNA comes from ancient Middle Eastern populations, with the majority of this portion of their DNA coming from the Levant. The Levantine genetic component is actually highest in Samaritans, Lebanese, and Palestinian populations, with Christian Palestinians and Christian Lebanese having slightly higher rates of the Levantine genetic component than their Muslim counterparts. Around 30 to 35% of Ashkenazi DNA is actually Southern European, which makes sense because of the history of the ancestors of the Ashkenazi settling in the Roman Empire before their migration up more north. Finally, around 25% of their DNA is Northern European, reflecting their settlement in Central and Eastern Europe. Sephardi Jews have a very similar genetic profile, as they are also descendants of European Jews whose ancestors came from the Levant and mixed primarily with Southern Europeans. Sephardi DNA is usually around 30 to 50% Middle Eastern, with the bulk of this DNA coming from the Levant, with the rest coming from regions along Mesopotamia and the areas surrounding the Levant. Around 40 to 50% of their DNA is Southern European, and also they can have some North African DNA. However, this genetic component can vary heavily based on what Sephardic community someone is from, as some may have a heavy input of this DNA, where others might have close to zero or none at all. Like I said, there can be a large range in the DNA of these people as they have a history of migrations from place to place, and these places will have an impact on their genome. So, what does it mean to be Jewish? As we've explored, the Jewish identity is a complex blend of religion, ethnicity, culture, and history. From their origins in the Levant to migrations across the Mediterranean, Europe, North Africa, and beyond. The genetic makeup of Jewish populations reflects this history of movement and adaptation, with varying degrees of Middle Eastern, European, and North African ancestries, and even South Asian or East Asian, and many other ancestral components that make up different Jewish groups. Yet, despite these differences, all Jewish communities can trace their roots back to a common historical and religious origin, shaped by centuries of migration, resilience, and cultural exchange. Understanding the Jewish identity requires looking beyond simple labels. If you found this video interesting, be sure to like, subscribe, comment, let me know what your thoughts are. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.